Hello and welcome back to the Tin Barn. I'm Pragmatic Lee, and in today's video we're going to follow up a little bit on an idea I had in the last video. The last video dealt with the making the step to go on my John Deere tractor, and in that video you saw me bend this bracket as a lateral support for the step. To make that bend, what I did was take my two press blocks, clamp them together. These are, it looks like torch cut, so they're not real flat, but I clamped them together so they wouldn't fall over. Laid the workpiece across that V. Just took a little piece of flat bar that I had, looks like about 3/8 thick. Laid it where I wanted the bend to be, and then used one of the drifts on the press and press that down. These drifts, if you didn't see that video, I made one 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, and a 6-inch one. And they have a magnet inside of them. They go up on the stem that's on the bottom of the press, and makes it so much easier than trying to get 3 or 4 hands in there to hold a workpiece in place. What we're going to do today is try to make a little bit easier to use apparatus out of some pieces that I just simply picked up out of my drops bin. For the die, I'm going to use a piece of, this looks like about 1.5 inch angle here, good thick 1/4 inch. I'm going to put some end caps on it. Something to this effect. This will be the cradle that the workpiece sets over to be pushed down into. I'll clamp that up and give that a good weld on both sides. This is a little over 4 inches long here, so that'll be plenty big to do any cold bending on the press. Now for the punch that I go down in there, I found this piece of 1/2 inch thick material that at some point I carried to the grinder and ground a bit of a, as you can see there, ground that down a little bit. But what I want to do is take this to the surface grinder and put a much better flat on each side of that. I will not try to carry this down to a point, as this piece of angle I'm using has got a round in it in the bottom anyhow. So I'll carry that down so it fits fairly close in there. And I think that'll be the first thing I do is carry this over to the surface grinder, grind that down. But the other piece, one more piece that I will be making for this, as I said, I use these one of the drifts. I'm going to make another one out of this piece of stock. Again, I found in my drops supply. I will bore out one end like this, same as this right here. Put a couple magnets in the bottom of it so it holds up on the stem on the press. But what we'll do on the other side is mill out about a 1/4 inch deep slot, maybe even 3/8 inch deep slot for this to set in, and I'll weld that in place. So there'll be some mill work, some lathe work, and some surface grinder work, and a little bit of welding. Okay, some of you may be wondering why I'm going to use a surface grinder instead of just setting this up in the mill and milling these 45s on here. The reason being, if I was to go to the mill to do this, which would be perfectly fine to do, but it would probably mean taking the vise off the mill, putting the sign plate on, getting it all clamped down, getting this clamped down onto the sign table, and then do the milling. Flip it over, go through all the setup, and clamping on the opposite side. Mike could put it in the mill with a 45-degree angle block clamping on these sides, and do the milling on the y-axis. But let me show you just how simple it's going to be to set this up on the surface grinder. Got the table cleaned. Let me get the wheel up out of the way. Alright, I got a 45-degree magnetic transfer block. Let me be sure I got all the grid off. So the only setup on this required, put that in about the center of the vise. And I like to put a bump block over here on this side. Set the workpiece in and turn on the mag chuck. Alright, over on the workbench, I put a little die cam on this edge over here and mark the center, put it down on my stone plate, and with a height gauge laid out a center mark on there. As I said earlier, I probably won't try to take that to a point, but I want to take it down to the point where it cleans this up. If it comes out to a point, that's perfectly fine as well. So we'll get some rotation going. We'll get some lateral movement going. Now we got the rotation. And I've already put a dress on the wheel. I'm advancing down 1/1000th for each pass. And that has cleaned that up very nicely. All right. All right. Here's what it looks like. That's the edge that was made on the grinder, and this is the surface grinder. So let's flip it over and do the other side. I decided to put a second stop block in here. Just keep easing down until I touch off. All right, and just like that, we've got our angles on. Let's go over to the lathe now and we'll start working on the drift. Okay, as I said earlier, we're going to leave the this drift the full diameter of this piece I got out of my work bin. But what we want to do is make this pocket in here. This piece has already got a center hole in it, so I'm going to attempt to use it. I think it'll be plenty close enough for what we're doing. Got a piece of tape on my drill bit here just to give me an idea of about the depth. Depth is not critical, but slow down a little bit. All right, I'm going to start with the smaller boring bar till we get a little hole worked out there, and then I'll put the larger one in. Alright, that 3/8 boring bar is cutting good, but let's go with the 1/2 inch one, give a little bit more rigidity. Alright, we're going to want about a 1.2. That's about 398 thousandths, 400 thousandths to go. And I'm taking 60 at a pass. There's 30 on each side. Alright, that should be pretty close to our target of 1.2. It's fine if it's oversized, we just don't want it undersized any. And it still needs about 50 thousandths to go. .234. So again, it's a little bit big, but that is perfectly fine. And just because we're here, we're going to go ahead and face that end off, get it perpendicular to the bore. Alright, I know. Let me look and see what the inside of that looks like. Okay, that looks fine in there. I know that's going to be hot, so I'm going to cool that down, and then we'll go over to the mill and mill a slot in the bottom of this for a couple magnets to glue into, and then mill the slot in the other end for our blade, for the lack of a better term, will set in. Got the workpiece in the mill vise now, and got a V-block in the back here, just so we got good 3 points of contact. What I'm going to do now is find the center of this. I'm interested in the center on the y-axis, not necessarily on the x-axis. Alright, kicked off, so we'll zero out the x-axis right here. I'm finding zero on both of them. Again, I'm only really interested in the y-axis. X 1/2. So now when we come back to the center here, we know we're finding the y-axis center in both directions. I know that'll make sense, but if you've ever found center, you know what I'm talking about. Alright, there's the center on the Y. I'm going to lock that down because we're going to need that same center for what we're doing on this end and when we flip it over. I'm going to take the edge finder out now and put a 1/2 inch end mill in. The magnets I'm going to be using in this are these little button magnets right here. They're actually called refrigerator magnets, but they're about 110 thousandths thick, so I'm going to go down 120 thousandths. You don't want the magnet setting proud any at all. If you do, it'll crush the magnets. Alright, so let's come down until we just zero out. Alright, we'll zero that. and see if we can plunge in. I'm not going to try to take a whole lot at a time. Alright, that's about 120 thousandths there. Okay, I think maybe you can see down in there what we've got is a slot for the magnets to glue down into. And the index in between the slot of the magnets and the and this slot right here has no bearing whatsoever. Alright, we'll zero out there, come out here to our end, and I want to be sure I'm good and tight. Let's set my zero again. And we're going to come somewhere between 1/4 and 3/8 deep. Alright, that was about 350 thousandths. We're going down, that's about 400 thousandths there. Should give us plenty of weld contact. Oh yeah, that will fit in there nicely. Little snug fit in there and weld down. Alright, I'll get this piece deburred, then get this seated down. It's not seating all the way down in there right now. I probably just need to clean off some of the mill scale on this piece right here that we're calling the blade. But then I'll get set up to weld this on, weld this into place, and also weld the end caps onto the cradle. By the way, the magnets that will be glued into this end will be the very last thing I do, because the heat generated in welding this would melt that glue if I was to do it ahead of time. Okay, I got the drift seated down in place now. The blade seated in the drift, ready to weld up. Also got the end caps on the cradle clamped into place. I'll weld that up. Then I'll go back to the workbench, glue some magnets in here, and meet you guys over at the press, and we'll give this a test and see how it works. Alright, I decided against using this piece. The only reason I pulled this out of the material bin, as I said before, it already had some grinding on both sides for some project I had done in the past. But I got to thinking about the cradle that I made, and I got the ends welded. Onto it. But I got to thinking about, this is 4 inches long, so why not make a press or a knife, we were calling it, make it a little wider. So I went back to my parts bin or my material bin and found a piece that I cut 4 inch off of, carried it to the grinder, and did the same thing as far as putting an edge on it. I got the magnets glued down in them. That'll hold up there. And here's our piece. We'll try to get that lined up. And let's see, let me round up here we go. Here's a piece of material, much like we bent in the previous one. It's a 1/4 inch thick and about 1 1/4 inches wide. So let's just put that in there. We'll center it up. I don't think that's too bad for a little 20-ton press. We did probably didn't quite get a 90-degree here. I would probably have to make a little bit different trough and a different blade to get a full 90-degree because of the spring back. As I say, that's about 1 1/4 inches wide. Here's a piece 2.5 inches wide. No, I'm sorry, 3 inches wide. Let's see how it does on it. And I'm not fooling myself at all by thinking this is going to bend a 1/2 inch or even 3/8. I believe this 1/4 inch material is probably about the max. And yes, I'm wearing eye protection. And there we have a bend in a 3 inch wide piece. Again, it's not quite a full 90, but I could do that in the vise and anvil to get that last little bit. I do see one thing I've got to do different. That put a stretch in this. As you can see, that bent that out. I'm going to have to grind this off, remake this, and put some reinforcement on the sides on here. But I think the concept is good, and I think it'll work. Okay, I hope you got a little something out of this little ton press project. As I say, I've got to do something a little different here for the trough. The ones I had seen before had some welding on the side over here, had some reinforcement, but I didn't really think about what that would, what the benefit of that would be. And that bit of reinforcement would have kept this from spreading out. Maybe even thicker angle iron would have worked as well. But again, I hope you've enjoyed it, got a little something out of this video. We'll see you on the next one.